everyone, and welcome to our podcast, Clear as Mud, where we talk to game developers from all walks of life about their personal and professional journeys. I'm your host, Graham Waldrop. As always, our show is presented by Mudstack, the only asset management and collaboration tool custom built for game studios and digital artists. For more information, head over to mudstack.com. On today's show, we welcome Shaun Bell, art director at Bonfire Studios. However, when we did this interview with Shaun, he was the art director for Treyarch and worked on numerous Call of Duty Black Ops games, starting with Black Ops 2 in 2011 and worked there until last year. We unpack a ton of information in this episode, including what it's like to make a multiplayer map in Call of Duty, how Shaun guides younger artists, diversity in the game industry, and how the Treyarch team overcame the COVID-19 pandemic that occurred during the development of Black Ops Cold War. And the cool part about this episode to me is that it doesn't matter if you're a Call of Duty fan, because you're going to be a fan of Shaun. He's a great guy, has a ton of insight, and he really paints a clear picture about what it's like to work on such a huge franchise and the pressure that comes with that, and a whole lot more. So without further ado, here's Shaun Bell. What is that like working on such a huge title that has millions of fans, ton of expectations from Activision, the studio, I'm sure, and just get into that process of creating some of the biggest and most beloved titles, I'd say, in the franchise in a lot of respects. Would just love to know your experience working on that stuff.
I always think about working on AAA or just taking a step back when I first kind of entered into like Treyarch and working on a game, on a project like Call of Duty. It was like coming out of high school and going straight into the NBA. Though the mechanics of like what you have to do is, consistent from game company to game company, it's just everyone's faster, everyone's stronger, everyone's like on top of their game. So you're no longer the person that is the best in your craft at another company. You're amongst like elite talent. I think with that, it comes a level of discipline, a level of commitment that is really unmatched at any other studio that's working on games that might not have as much of the public eye. So it's a really competitive environment, but not in a competitive of like everyone just wants to come against like your ideas or anything. It's just everybody wants to make the best game. So they're asking the tough questions. They're really wanting to know what you're putting forth. And as an art director, they want to know the direction that you want to go down. Is it sound? Have you thought through all the specific things? And this goes from like working with lighting, working with character design, working with UI. Everyone want to make sure that where we're headed is the best way, the best direction we can go to add value. And not just do something for the sake of doing something. Even though there's time and place for that, most of the time it's like this decision needs to help propel where we're going. So it's a different mentality. One other aspect to the question of like, what is it like? And we might unpack this later, but what is it like to work on a AAA game like Call of Duty? You have this constant buzz in the back of your head of what the players might be thinking, what the players might be interested in. So most of the people there love playing our game. So they love, making content for our game. So when you have that, people are very passionate and committed in doing what they need to do to get the job done. And sometimes that's, you got to work pretty hard or some later hours, but it's always with the eye on a prize of like just trying to make the best thing. So I think that's kind of a general overview.
Does it ever get personal at all between, maybe design and art in terms of like trying to make the best decision for the game?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, right? So short answer is yes. And it's not just art and design. It's design and tech. It's art and tech. It's every department, art and audio, every department really looks at it as like their part is the most important part of the game. And specifically between art and design, the way I personally look at it, and the way I also try to kind of direct out of, is understanding what it is that design is trying to communicate, and making sure that as an art director that we're complementing that, and not doing something that's going to grossly be at odds with that. But there are times that art is making a decision that is going to be in direct conflict with the agenda of what design have, and that's when you got to roll up your sleeve and you got to kind of like really hash it out with them of like, why do you want to go down the path you want to go down, and how we can still meet the needs that they might want to some degree.
Right. Can you think of a specific instance?
Yeah, for sure. There's several instances that comes to mind. If you look at our history, so you can see on Black Ops, let's say multiplayer specifically, you can see on like Black Ops 2 and Black Ops 3, when we look at the lighting in our maps, the lighting, the way to think about multiplayer, it's like it's playing chess. Both sides are set up with even ground, and you have the equal amount of like players, and you're just kind of making the best chess move to get to where you need to get to. Because of that, we try to keep the chessboard as neutral as possible. So if you look at, say, Black Ops 2, Black Ops 3, even Black Ops 1, you'll see that like our environments have a level of exposure that allows for equal footing if you're indoor or outdoor, right? But as we started to transition, like, say, onto Cold War, we really wanted to push more of the contrast. We really wanted to push like that authenticity, that realism that comes in like living in a real environment. So with that, you have more harsher contrast, which then goes directly in conflict with player visibility. So a person can be inside and we're outside, and you just have that disparity, which you would naturally have in a real life environment. But when you're playing chess, again, you want it to be as neutral as possible. So that was some tough conversations, and not just with me, just with kind of our overall staff of like, how do we push quality? How do we push that realism, but still adhere to what design have in? Those are just like late at night talking with some of the design directors and design leads about where do we want to pick our battles? Where do we, no pun intended, but where do we want to pick our battles and come to a compromise? But it started with, at the beginning of the game, making sure that they are aligned with what our objective is, which is getting quality. And quality is realism. Quality is authenticity. Quality is something that is really tangible for the player,
Yeah, and I noticed just from, I actually didn't play Black Ops 3, but I played 2. And
shame on you.
I know. I'm sorry.
No worries.
But I played 2 and I played 4. I played 4 really recently, actually. Well, not super recently, but I got COVID over December. And I was just like, it was over Christmas, so it was off for the holidays, but it was just, it was a very COVID Christmas, and my wife and I were like, we got to download a bunch of games that we haven't played before, and let's just sit on the couch, sick as dogs, and we're just playing games, and we played, and she and I used to play Black Ops 1 all the time. Like
nice.
That was our jam. And
zombies
so we did zombies. We did the split screen multiplayer online stuff.
Yeah.
And man, we had a blast doing that. That was That was a lot of fun nights in college doing that. Mm-hmm. But we were like, oh, let's do Black Ops 4. And one thing I really appreciated for the jump from 2 to 4 is like, I didn't notice that contrast as much as, I mean, what I'm trying to say is like, I wasn't thinking about that contrast when I was playing 4. But the thing I really, now that you mentioned that, I appreciate it, is there is that visual contrast. And it does make it feel more realistic in terms of like the indoor areas versus the outdoor areas. The way specific guns, the way the guns fire outside versus inside. I mean, there's a level there that's really, really nice to behold. As someone who hadn't played the Black Ops series in so long, I really appreciated what y'all did visually there, because that, even though I could understand that mindset of being like, well, what does this do to player visibility? I'm like, you know what, I like this because I kind of know what to expect now when I'm going outside. Like your brain starts to adjust to it, and it's not like unfair or anything. So I think that was a great move.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and once again, it's like a testament to everyone kind of getting on board with what we're trying to do, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. As like leading games out there, we try to constantly push forward and push ourselves. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, and I imagine too, because you guys are making these games at such an incredible rate in terms of just like, it's a prolific studio. I mean, you guys are making some of the biggest games there are, and you're turning them around really fast.
Yeah.
That's got to be so difficult, one, to keep doing that, and two, keep finding periods of time to attack, because we've done the Modern Warfare, we've done World War II. You guys doing Cold War was really cool, I think, because we hadn't really seen a lot of that. But that's also got to be a challenge, right? When I'm sure everybody's thinking about, like, hey, so what's the next game? What time period is it set in? Sort of deal.
Yeah, so to really make sure I'm understanding your question is like, It's just like there is a pace, and it goes back to what I originally said, like just being able to hit the ground running, and you're playing with these, like, really you're working side by side with some of these elite people on your team. When you transition from year to year to year, there is a little bit of part of the team peels off and look towards the future, looks towards like what's happening on the next game. And we use, like most AAA games, make decisions portionally out of a portion of it is by passion and like what we think will be the next experience that's different than the last experience. But there's a bit of also like analytics that comes into this whole thing of like what makes the most sense. You're looking across the landscape, and Battlefield is coming out with like World War II. It's like, well, that doesn't really make sense for us right now. Fortunately enough for Black Ops, we're true to our our core Black Ops experience. So we have a lane that we stay within, to make sure that we can really kind of hit that. So from year to year, it's like, there's a portion of us that's focused on getting the ship game done. There's a portion of us that's focused on servicing like all of our post content, and then there's a portion of us that are focused on what's next, what's coming, and it's scalable. And as one starts to die down, we start to fill up the other. So it's an endurance. I look at it as a marathon. It's definitely an endurance.
What do you guys do to kind of sort of keep morale up when you're just in this constant marathon, as you put it?
Yeah. So morale can be answered in a couple of different ways. First, at the core is like what is kind of depleting morale, and I would say that could be anywhere from stuff that's happening in people's personal lives to the state of the world, to how people are talking about our game. But if we're just talking about the pace, of what's happening with making a game like ours, the morale is that we really focus on giving people time off. We really try to be mindful, time off beyond just your normal paid time off. So we try to give people time off above and beyond. But to be honest, right, it is a challenge, to keep people, their morale boosted. If it's solely about the rate in what we're working on, but we try to get ahead of that, and I think for us, or at least for me, and I know there's a couple of key others that really try to stay on a pulse of our team, and making sure that we are looking out for them and getting them what their needs. So it's about being proactive. It's about keeping a pulse on what's going on and having those real crucial conversations with people. So the game is made up of people. So we really need everyone to kind of show up and be present. And we try to do what we can to make sure we're giving them what they need as well.
It's always a tricky balancing act, but yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to just break down like the workflow processes that you have in place in terms of like you're creating a map, right? Like it doesn't even have to be like a specific one you guys did, but like high level version of like you guys are making a map, you're working with design, obviously you're working with everybody, but what's that like? And then how are you managing all the people on your team to ensure that, the vision is completed?
There is obviously secret sauce to creating the type of game that we have that's just like working on it from year to year. But if you really break it down into practical like roadblocks, it's starting off with just sitting in a room, and nowadays just talking through Slack about like what is the map, and really trying to, or what is the concept, and really try to work through like the high level visuals, the high level hooks, the high level of the game, of whatever map. And then from there, it's always this baton back and forth where design will take some of the ideas, they'll do a little bit, then art will go forth and keep ideating on the overall design. And then we play test almost every day, or as many times as possible. So once the map is at a certain level, then we start really play testing that more consistently. And some of the things that we say, it's just like the map will kind of tell us what we need. So we'll, as we're making decisions, we're checking that against our initial visual design, our visual hooks, our game pillars, all our gameplay pillars, and all that. And we go through kind of a blockout phase, a production detailing phase, and so on, to once we get to the final like alpha phase of the map, and that's when we open it up wider within a broader group to play the game. And then we get into their feedback, and from there we spend just a little bit of time to polish, and then we'll put it away, because what we do is we learn from every map. Is like a learning. So now we take that, what we learned on this map, we move on to a next map, and then come back to the map before we really polish it. So nothing. And we say this to the team, it's like we're never done until it's shipped. So we're constantly going back and forth on maps that we've probably worked on over a year ago. We'll come back to and redo.
Well, I like that too. When you're saying sort of near the end where it gets to a certain point, you put it away and then you'll come back to it, because it's probably good to get some separation from it, because you've been working on it like crazy and you need some time to really get fresh eyes on it, right?
Yeah, man, because you if you stare at something too long, you don't see its flaws anymore, or you see flaws that are not really of value. Right, that no one's really going to care about who's playing it. Very much so. Yeah. And I mean, as art directors, we get caught up into like, oof, we need to move that blade of grass over. And it's like, no, dude, no, actually, no, we don't. No, we need to leave it alone.
Right. And when you're thinking about the overall visual look for something, what goes into that?
Yeah, the overall visual hook. A lot of our maps are based on just real world locations. So it's important for us to be culturally sensitive to what's happening in those environments. Also, like our games sometimes are period pieces, so we also want to be mindful of what's happening in that time in space. Like if there was a big change in regime, within that country, we try to make sure that we be as honest as possible with that. So with that out the way, it's just a lot of sitting back, going through Google search, Google Dives, and pulling a bunch of references. We look at, so we have what is the conflict of what's happening in the map, and then we have like the specifics of like the map might be in Kyrgyzstan. Okay. I never been to Kyrgyzstan, but I can now, I can look online, get a feel of like the culture and get a feel of like what's happening there, and put together basically like a mood board that really gives people a quick snapshot of like, here's what's happening. And we work with the designers to make sure not designers, work with narrative and just make sure that we are being honest to our overall game narrative, but also what's happening in that specific area. So a lot of reference dives, a lot of mood boards. And then from there, we get, once everyone's aligned with where we're going, we really start to focus in on the particulars, the cult, what what are the core landmarks and things like that. So we start to really shape out the identity of what the map is.
Right. And how much liberty, I know you're saying you guys are always trying to be culturally sensitive and you're working closely with narrative, but how much liberty can you take with a location, if you need to make a change for the game? Since
we're not beholden to the actual location directly, because there could be whatever legal reasons or whatever, we have a lot of flexibility or creative liberty to make adjustments. But we really try to hit that squint test type of thing, that if you're looking at it, you're like, yep, that's generally there. We really try to be mindful, like especially if we're in different cultures that have, or different regions that have a really a strong identity with religious iconography. We really try to be mindful of making sure we're not encouraging any type of religious attacks or anything like that. So we stay clear of that. But we're also, if it is something like that, we try to be really mindful to be honest to what that will look like versus like some Americanized perspective of what that could be. So, we really try to be honest to key things, but then we're making a game, and at the end of the day, the game has to play. The game has to be cool. You have to have fun.
Yeah, it's not going to be a 1-to-1 representation or something.
No, for real. I mean, we made flying. Not flying. We made a map called Skyjack, which is a flying, transport military assault vehicle. So.
Oh yeah. I always loved those RC cars and all their various permutations.
Yeah, man. Yeah, those are some of the funnest score streaks to have. Some of those RCXDs.
Yeah, when I saw that in 4, I was like, yes, this just brings me back.
Yeah,
that was also something I was really interested in terms of just how you guys have transformed your level design. Because I remember playing 2, and I thought, man, these maps feel really small. Like a lot of the maps felt really like the skate park one, especially to me, felt like tiny. And when I was, trying to play like a bigger game like Domination or something, I was like, this is just insane. Like there's too much going on. I'm spawning and just getting killed. And then when I played 4, the competitive, I was like, everything just feels so spread out in a good way. Like I really dug what you guys did there with the level design in terms of, and I know that's not like your focus, but I just think it's really cool how, you guys are, it seems like you're always trying to iterate really hard on the level design in terms of, not just your visual stuff, but also just the design itself, which I definitely appreciate as a player.
Yeah. Like our designers, man, are like, they're pretty dope in regards of almost every designer plays every other like multiplayer game that's out there. So they have a constant pulse on like what is happening. Mm-hmm. So yeah, like you said, I'm not really, I can't directly talk about how they go about doing their things because they're wizards in my mind. But yeah, every game we really try to figure out how do we up the player experience, mm-hmm. And that might be one game or one launch cycle. We might have a lot of like small quick engagement type of experiences, because that's also where the environment, where the player landscape is at. They want quick engagements, they want those quick experiences, and then some games we need to be more fast and fluid, and which requires the maps to be a little bit bigger, mm-hmm. because you can run a little bit faster, you can move a little bit quicker, you can mount a little bit quicker. So we really try to look at what we've done, what is working, but we don't want to be too prescriptive of like, you should know exactly what you're getting. There's a bit of that, but it's more or less like, how do we up it a bit, and I give a lot of testament to the designers for being able to, always propose like, here's what we need to do for the next game. Here's mm-hmm. how we're going to improve the next game. It's like, all right, that sounds dope. Let's go do that.
Right. How much emphasis do you guys put on like when you're creating a map, or you're creating a bunch of maps? Obviously, you guys make a ton of maps mm-hmm. every game, but sort of like modular design or sort of reusing assets in different ways, like sort of little tips and tricks there. Because I think that's something, a lot of younger artists or people who are students, they don't really think about sometimes when they're creating something, and how important that is. One, in the sense of like, it helps the engine, but it also, saves you a lot of time as an artist.
Yeah, man. In most game studios, obviously there's standards like that we try to adhere to. So like window standards, like mantle height standards. So all of that is pretty just like consistent throughout the industry. But modularity is kind of like key. Well, it's key to a point that gets you like that 70% of like basic kind of like breakdown. But as we get more into like photogrammetry and becoming more true to real world scale, each building is a little different, right? Because in reality, each building is different. So there is a bit of modularity that we try to keep in to save our lives and keep us sane. But that last 30% is where we really try to add the bespoke pieces to it, to really make it feel like you're in the environment. So a room might be, a certain size or certain unit size from room to room, but then this room might be a little different, just to allow for, because you're going to run through it a lot, to allow for more landmarking experiences or opportunities for people to understand and orient where they're at. So yeah.
And so you guys are working with photogrammetry?
Yeah. We've been working.
How's that? I haven't really talked to anybody that's really working with that stuff, and that's really interesting.
Yeah, photogrammetry has been in our pipeline for quite some time. It has its like benefits, and it also has its trade-offs. So here's with regards to benefits. It saves with regards of trying to replicate. And once again, going back to authenticity, it's really key. It's like it saves us from trying to make something that people know what a fire hydrant look like, but there is this like little details that, since every fire hydrant is different, it might be a little different, and it just helps you kind of like, it's just that little bit that's like, yeah, that just feels right. To buildings, it's like the way like the weather lays on a building, and how just over time it gets sun bleached and all of that. So photogrammetry, and even to like rocks and assembling of like how the building is actually assembled. Sometimes the second floor is not consistent with like all the other floors, right? It's that's the benefits. You take the guesswork out of some of that stuff. Mm-hmm. Where it's a challenge is like sourcing, like going, if we're making, let's say Kyrgyzstan, let's go back to the Kyrgyzstan example. Kyrgyzstan might have like a very unique architectural style, which requires you to actually have to go there, versus like, oh, I can just go to some place in like Spain that might be similar, or maybe somewhere here in the States where it's like Santa Barbara, so the problem comes is, okay, now we got to fly people over there to this very remote place, and then from there deal with all the specific region laws and region like legal stuff that's there. If you're going to be making this map, you got to get ahead of that way in advance. We have like team members that focus primarily on just photogrammetry, just so that we can get ahead of a lot of that. And from there, it's like processing all that data, putting together maps so that we can run around in it to make sure it feels right. And then we apply those learnings into our actual maps. So most of the time, the bottlenecks come into not being able to find the thing that we want to look for, because there could just be a multitude of issues. So we have to get creative. We're now flying people to Hawaii to grab something that's very specific to a map that's actually in Norway or something like that.
Well, it sounds like, the benefits pay off in terms of the authenticity of it.
I think for sure.
The games are looking better and better, not just because of technological advances, but I would imagine that plays a huge role in it.
Yeah, for sure. Before, it's like, hey, we need these rocks. So someone had to sculpt the rocks in ZBrush, and they had to do like a displacement map, all these different things. And it would look cool. It would look good. But it's that uncanny where you're like, something just feels off about it. And when you get lighting and you get all those elements playing together, you're like, something feels off. It's passable, but something feels off. Where with photogrammetry, it's just like, nope, that the textures is 1-to-1 to the actual scale of what that model is, and you're like, yep, that all makes sense.
It's actually something we've had a couple of art directors on. I always forget to ask this, so I'm gonna take advantage of this now. Mm-hmm. Texturing, what's y'all's texture kind of pipeline like? Do you guys automate anything, or is it by hand, or how does that work? How do you guys bring that stuff really to life?
Yeah, once again, like a lot of our stuff is, scanned and stuff like that. So, mm-hmm. There was a time and place where we did paint a lot of textures. So each artist had to be equally proficient in being a good modeler as well as being a good texture artist. But most of the stuff now that we get are scanned. Not to take away from, there are a lot of stuff that we don't scan, but we at this point in creating this game, there's just such a repository of different things that we're clever in how we can take something that was textured for something else and modifying it to be able to apply to something else. So it's a lot of reuse when we can, because it's volume that we're trying to get out, and doing as much scanning. But yeah, there's a lot of automation involved, but most of the time, we get what we need, we make what we need to adjust, I mean, we do what we need to adjust it, and then we just keep moving forward.
I imagine it must be really useful for things like guns. So many guns, right?
Yeah. Like guns. Guns are one of those ones for sure that we have to scan because it's just, yeah. I mean, obviously we can't use something directly one-to-one because there's obviously legal issues involved with almost anything we do of this scale. But there are like textures and things like that can be ported over. Like say if you're making an anodized metal, we can scan something like that in, get that real look, and then we have amazing material artists that tech artists that can make materials that get us that direct look. Because one half of it is the texturing, right? But the other half, so 1/3 is the texturing, the other third is the materials, obviously. Really making sure the materials are dialed in, and then the other third is the lighting. You know what I mean? And making sure that everything is compliant, meaning everything works. Because we work in photo-based PBR, photo-based reality. So we try to make sure that everything's compliant. Nothing's too black, nothing's too white, so that when you get it in an environment, it works consistently. So
yeah. And how big is your team that you supervise?
My direct team is a total of like 4, but that's not consistent across all the Treyarch. Like each lead has a mixture of different amounts. We try to not put more than 8 direct reports.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like you would have 4 people that are reporting directly to you, and then they have a bunch of people reporting to them, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think, the specific group that, the specific group that I have directly reported into me, they handle actually more of, I would say, our marketing side of things. Because it's just, it is, there's no rhyme or reason why someone is reporting into someone sometimes at Treyarch. It's a good thing, but it's also, it's just, what's the best manager for that person or for that group, and that's how we look at it.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, like, if you're having 45, 50 people that you're directly supervising, I imagine that would be insane.
Yeah, you'll lose your mind.
I was gonna get into I was gonna be like, well, how do you connect with a team of that size? But that doesn't sound like that's a problem.
No, but with that, I guess like if we just so we have, like, for me, I have one-on-ones. So the way to affect and be present is when you start to get more and more at leadership and director levels. I think there's this, or at least I used to have this thought of like, oh man, when I'm a director, I'm gonna be able to say and tell people what to do and get to do whatever I want, and the game's gonna be look in my vision. And really what you find is that, or at least what I found, is that once you get to a certain point, it's about releasing ownership, as much ownership, because you're just trying to make sure everyone is effective at what they're doing. And the way of doing that is making sure you're setting clear objectives, clear goals, but it's also about like setting up one-on-one meetings with people to, one, make sure that they're being heard and seen, and that you can keep a pulse on what's going on and or what's happening in their team. Then we have like weekly meetings with a broader group of like leaderships and leaders. And we also have them with cross disciplinaries as well. And then we also have more formal, bigger meetings, where it's more studio wide. So my day consists of a lot of meetings and actually less of me sitting around doing the artwork, just so that the team is being as effective as possible and being heard and seen.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you're almost like a protective barrier in a way.
Very much so. I actually, I always, every once in a while, because producers, I love them, but they're always like, hey, we got to go. We got to move. We got to keep going. And I always look at myself as Gandalf, where I'm like, you shall not pass. You just like, that is our job as being directors and leaders, is like understanding what needs to come through and how we can push the team, and when we need to like hold the line and be like, nope, we need to spend more time, or no, we need to kind of let this go at this point in time. So
yeah, that's got to be a hell of a balancing act with projects of this scale, knowing when to relent and when to protect. There's no way to probably get to know what to do until you get, so many situations like that, and you just sort of learn by doing, I guess, at that point, right? Yeah,
there's a bit of like reading the tea leaves and being like, there's a lot of factors involved with like understanding that. I think there's a systematic approach on like, hey, this map is not ready, or this asset is not ready because of these whatever impediments are getting in the way. But then there's sometimes when it's just that gut feeling of, hey, we're not getting assets on a certain time. I know we can probably push for it, but I think it's better. And when you're a director or a lead, but especially someone like me, it's like understanding where we're at in the schedule, and you kind of have to talk the talk of each discipline. So you have to be a jack of multiple trades. So I could sit with a producer and be like, look, I know we're supposed to have this done, but we need to push this out. And here's how we can push it out. Looking at what we have coming up, this is what we need to do. And then you go around and you gain buy-in. So I know I went in kind of a journey on that one, but there's no direct formula. It really comes down to what the situation is, understanding when you can convince producers, convince design, or convince other departments on that we need to push something, and really just trying to keep an eye on that. I think it's important for us to keep a view of what's coming and how we need to adjust.
Yeah, seeing sort of the smaller picture now, but realizing how it's going to impact the bigger picture.
Very much so.
And I mean, I'd be interested in talking more about that process and a lot more with Cold War, because that was developed during COVID. That came out during when we were in the pandemic in 2020. That must have been a hell of a thing to develop, in the sense of COVID happens. You guys are probably, I don't know how close you were at that point to being done, but the game's coming out later that year, so it's like time's running out, and then the world goes topsy-turvy. Between that and all the social injustice stuff going on, so I'd love to get to know the sort of development story behind that one.
Like that, man, we could probably spend a whole day on just that topic, but I would be remiss if I don't say this. I have to give it up to like our like IT department, and because here's what happened. What was it, January? You coming after the holidays, we're high-fiving, we knowing what we need to do. Then February, we're like, oh, I guess there's this pandemic. I think it's going to be a couple of weeks. Then what? Later that month, it was like, oh no, this is real. We gotta leave like tomorrow.
Yeah, I remember when they canceled March Madness, I was like, oh my God, this is a real thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I need to start paying attention to what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, and it literally went from, this is not a thing, not a big thing. I mean, not that studio was saying that, but just, I think everyone was just thinking it's not a big enough thing to like, oh shit, we got leave, like right now. And why I say we have to give it up to the IT department, you go from like your systems and everything is set up so that people can be in the studio, to now someone might be in another state working on like the poorest of internet connections and still need to produce something at the right time. So for them to go from like, yeah, our life is sweet to like, oh man, are you telling me we gotta turn into Amazon and be able to like work with all these different people across the, I don't know. In saying that is because for me, it went from literally going in on Monday, and then on Wednesday it was like, you have to go home, take all your computer stuff with you.
Yeah.
To Friday of that same week, building the game and running and having meetings on that on that following Monday. That was insane, that we were able to do that. So I think when that happened, I think there was this like look around the group of like, the world is going crazy, especially in the early time, to like, yeah, I think we can still do this. Let's keep moving forward. And that, it wasn't like my decision. I think it was just a global, like universal, like, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then from there, once again, like all of our systems is set up from like automating level building, and all our tools are like, there's just a lot of automation and just like getting up to date, getting up to speed, and doing what you have to do, checking in. All that was pretty straightforward. And we already had a schedule of what we needed to do and what milestones were coming up. Obviously, it was flexible because we didn't know what was going to happen in the world. Like the world could have exploded, and I mean, who cared about Call of Duty at that point in time? But yeah. We were able to stay focused, and I feel like, and not to sound too preachy, but I feel like when things are really, and this is just how I view life, it's just when things are really crazy, it's like if you can have something constant that you can orient to, it just makes things a little bit more clear, just for that period of time. So I think because we had a schedule, because we had like clear milestones, and we were able to get back up to speed within like, for some people, like a week or 2 weeks, it was like, oh yeah, this is cool, and I get to be home. So that was the beginning. Then obviously you had a lot of come like that. June and July, you had a lot of social injustice, and for me, directly, I don't know if obviously people can't see me, but being African American, there was a lot of things just happening in the world that directly impacted me, personally and family and stuff like that. And it was hard to stay focused on what we had to get done. But I give it to like the leadership of Treyarch. And when I say leadership, I mean more like the studio heads, for them to give us grace of like, dude, this is not that important right now. Like, go take care of family, go take care, and just having that support allowed everyone to take time away to process. We even shut down production in the midst of all of this, just to make sure that people were being able to process some of the stuff that was happening. I know everyone has a different experience during that time, but for me, in my tenure there, I think that was the first time I actually could say there was a tangible support in that regards. So I took a bit of time off. I think a bunch of people took a little bit of time off, and we came back, and we just kind of got back after it. But we got back after it like a little bit slower. I think we even scaled down our experience and our offering, not to like slight the player, but just, I don't know if you notice, like our pedigree is that we always try to go bigger. And this time we just wanted to make something that felt competent. And I mean, if you played our campaign experience, it was like, I would say it's probably hands down our best campaign experience that Black Ops that we've made. And it was because we got more focus on the essentials. versus like just making it grandiose.
Which, to me, I always like the sequel that goes a little smaller. For me, like that's one reason I love Empire Strikes Back so much. It's like you got the big Hoth battle initially, but the rest of it's just a character movie.
Yeah.
It's just a character movie and these two different storylines, and they collide at the end, and it's very understated. I mean, big things happen, but it's all character based. There's no Death Star. There's no, we don't got to blow anything up. It's just like fighting for the soul of Luke Skywalker. It's like that.
Exactly.
That's good stuff, man. That's all I need. So
exactly.
I think that was a good move. Well, one, it sort of sounds like it came from necessity, but also I can have a much more focused story and a better experience overall.
Yeah, man. And that gives you focus. The one thing that I really loved about working from home, and I think it's a bigger metaphor of probably the overall experience, is when we went home, the chatter went away. I understand that everybody have different mental capacities. Like some people, it might drive them insane not having the buzz. But for me, like not having the constant like people walking in the office, people asking you questions as you walk past, and and it's what needed. It really kind of cleaned off the lens a little bit so that you can focus a little bit more. And I think as a bigger piece, we were able to like, those random meetings that we were having at 8:00 about whatever lighting, was that important? No, it probably was not. So now it's like, okay, we've made a decision, and we can move forward without like constantly making micro adjustments that, in the grander scheme, I'm putting myself on blast. It's like in the grand scheme, it's like it's not really that important.
But it's still like, and I know you said like it was the first time you felt that you had support in that area in like a real tangible way. You feel like that support's still there, and that's something you guys are, being being more mindful of, I guess.
So I just think that short answer is yes, but I think society is not going to they're not going to allow bullshit, right? They're not going to allow for things to just go back to how, attempts at trying to solve something. Like, no, there needs to be a real tangible thing. And I really think, at least at Treyarch, I would say at Treyarch, can't really speak for Activision as a whole, but at least for Treyarch, there's been a commitment to making sure people are cool, making sure people are like, there's a big DE&I initiative, just I think globally across all corporations, but Treyarch, it's they're really focusing on some of that. And how does that manifest? That manifests in surveys, like, hey, what's your mental health? And then from there, our studio heads will talk about, here's where we're at mentally right now, across the studio. So we're going to give everyone like a no meeting Friday, and people have the ability to either take that as a day off, or they just can sit in blissful tranquility and getting work done without having a meeting pop up on their schedule. I really do feel like there's been an honest push in that, and I do genuinely appreciate that.
That sounds like a great move, and also just showing that they care about you guys and want you all to be in as good a headspace as you can be.
Yeah,
I'm sure with the switch to being remote, I mean, that had to completely change pipelines and everything too, in communication.
Yeah, man. It went from not knowing what Slack is at all to stop calling me on Slack. Like, your balance was like, all right, emails and your calendar invite, and organically meeting people in the hallway and talking about things, to I rarely check email. I'm pretty sure there's people probably yelling at me for not responding to an email, but I check Slack, religiously, you know what I mean? And in the organization. So it's it definitely changed the face of how we communicate. To it, the way I look at it was like email officially was formal and informal ways of communication, and then we had like other like I forget instant messaging services that we used, and those were just like super casual. Now Slack is, at least at Treyarch, it's the formal and informal way, and then email is primarily formal. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I got an email. This must be important. I had a lot of meetings already to like, I had a wall of meetings every day because you couldn't just walk in my office, you know? It was like just the smallest things like, hey, Shaun, I need you to look at the lighting in this level, or hey, what's going on with like the weather effects in another level. It's like everything was a meeting. I think most leaders looked at themselves as like, we're servicing the Zoom and Slack gods, and we're just going to do what we need to do to make sure everyone is unblocked. You know, we played a game, and what we would do, or like what I would do is like, hey, this looks odd, this looks weird, and I would just put it to a Slack channel that was specifically for that map, and they would, they meaning the teams, primarily the producers, will respond to me or whoever and say, hey, we're already taking care of that. We know it's a bug. Oh, thank you for calling it out. Maybe or hey, we need to set up a meeting because we don't know what your comments meant. So, and that will be one aspect. And then the other aspect will be just weekly reviews. Either it's for cinematics, it's for characters, for lighting. It's like constant reviews.
Did you guys have like difficulty adjusting to that, or was it pretty organic?
No, the review process is like, you know, if you're playing baseball, the swinging was consistent. Now, you know, now we're playing like, you know, on the Switch, and it's like, oh, this is all digital. The problem comes, the real tricky part comes in was like lighting, things that are sensitive to color accuracy and exposure. And also like there's latency issues when someone is streaming and you're like, wait, why did that explosion look like it's only like 2 frames per second? Like what happened there? Like, and then someone's like, well, it's running perfectly on my screen. And you're like, I know that looks kind of busted. You know, God bless all the APs, but they would also, I give them so much credit for this, but they would record the map, like a map fly through or something like that, typically the day prior of, or record like characters, typically a day prior, and send it to like myself, and you'd be able to like, oh, okay.
That's gotta be a little inconvenient though.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, but you also lose the organic nature of sitting in a room and reading the room and, you know, realizing that your decision was stupid. You know what I mean? You know, say, hey, I think we need to go down this direction. And people will tell you, sometimes they'll tell you when it sucks. There's a couple of key individuals, like one of my good buddies there, Rob, will straight up, like, he's like a senior lighter there, and he'll yell, Shaun, this is lame. And you know, you have a couple of those people, but sometimes you're in rooms with like really junior people or Zoom meetings, and they're nervous about giving feedback or don't know what feedback they should be providing. And with their camera off, it's hard to know what's happening. So it is challenging in that regards. It's challenging to connect and try to keep team engagement because they're not sitting next to you. Yeah,
that's something that I definitely miss from being in office. Are you guys back in the office, or can you kind of pick what you want to do? Or
we're not back in the office just yet. We're actually working through that right now. What does that look like? But I mean, there will be some hybrid type of environment moving forward. But yeah, I think the intention is to be back in the office for all the people that can and it's safe and it's healthy for. It is an intention to be back in the office. But I think for a portion of the group, you know, some people moved out of state and things like that, because it's cheaper to live, somewhere else. So it's going to still be, some of those people will have to be remote.
Yeah, I think now that we've gone through full remote, being able to shift back to a hybrid hopefully won't be too much of a transition, because we're kind of used to doing it both ways at this point.
What I'm actually interested in what will happen. I feel like the playing ground was even right now, because everyone was either equally uninformed of things or equally informed. You know what I mean? Because it required effort to seek out the information you need. Like, I have to call someone. I have to, you know what I mean? Someone has to make me aware and do whatever. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious of what's going to happen when we get back into the office, of the people that are not in the office, the shorthand knowledge that you would get just by literally at the microwave warming up a burrito and realizing like someone comes in and is like, hey, what's going on with this and this, and whatever the topic is could impact a multitude of different people. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I am curious the long-term effects of what that's going to be like.
How information is disseminated.
Yeah.
And that is a good point.
And just tracked. Yeah. And I can make a decision in passing with someone within 10 minutes that could alter the course of something. And now I got to bring people to speed of like, how do we make that? How do we even get to the point of having that conversation? Like, what happened? So you have to backtrack all of that. It's, mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm interested in what's going to happen moving forward.
I'm sure, like all things, there'll be an iterative process around it, where I'll start as something, then adjustments will be made, and you guys will figure it out. You guys sound like you guys know what you're doing. You're the best studios in the world. You'll figure it out. I have every confidence in you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you.
So in terms of like the overall, like when you're talking to your team about like sort of maintaining their creativity, but still you're making a big commercial game, like how do you guys try to find that balance within your team of empowering them but also making them realize, hey, we are making a game together, and you can't just like sort of do whatever you want, but you can still be creative, sort of deal. How do you guys balance that with your teams?
Yeah, that's a great question. When you're working on a project like COD, I think it's more real that you're a commercial artist at that point than you are just a creative output individual. And what I mean is that there's a bit of this decision is going to be seen by a multitude of different people, so I can't just make the decision flippantly. When on other games I've worked on, it was like, well, I think it's cool, so it's going in the game. And that's it.
Yeah.
So I think there's a bit of like, hey, your decisions have impact at a magnitude that's a little bit more different than any other experience I've been on. So I think people instantly calibrate to that. You know what I mean? You instantly realize like, oh yeah. And sometimes I've had to have conversations with some of the junior artists or whatever, and like, I know you want to do this and that, but we really need you to I need you to align to what we have going on, so you, or their lead will have to have those conversations to like, hey, we need to hear to the bigger picture and not make everything a unicorn. On the specific art team, with the artists themselves, how we give them the flexibility is that not everything's like solved. There's like, here's the overall vision for the map or the character design or whatever it is. And we hired you for a reason. You're not like artist number 45, right? It's like, no, we hired you, Joaquin, to do the best thing you can do. So we're expecting that you're going to fill in the blanks on a lot of things. And that's where your creativity comes in, to really fill in those blanks and to modify it and then come up with something that causes us to be like, hey, that's a different perspective. It's still in line with what we have planned, but it's a little different. So now we can make adjustments. A lot of times artists also, it's like, if you feel really passionate about something a certain way, like especially with lighting, it's like, hey, I think the time of day is like this, whatever. And the artist might be like, well, I really think we should do the lighting like this. Whatever it is, could be like morning with fog or something like that. And it's like, well, let's get the first thing first, and then let's put the other one on on another light set so that we can switch between, and then we'll play it. And what we find a lot of times is sometimes it's like, oh, well, that actually, it doesn't take away and actually adds. So, and then that boosts that artist's confidence and being able to do what they got to do.
Yeah. I like that a lot too. It's like, let's see if that'll work, as opposed to being like, no, we're not even going to entertain that.
Yeah, no, it's like, you do what's laid out and what we agreed upon, and let's make sure that is sound and competent, and then show us your option.
Yeah, and then that way, if it doesn't work out right with what they wanted to do, it's like, at least you got what you originally set out to do.
Exactly.
Super smart. Yeah, like that a lot. In terms of, we were talking about earlier, your experience with all the social injustice of 2020 and whatnot, in terms of like, and also thinking more about diversity in the games industry and inclusiveness. How are you feeling about that, at this time, whether it be like in Treyarch or in the industry in general? Curious about your thoughts there.
Diversity, definitely. I think our games, especially on Black Ops, have started to become more diverse. Like if you look at if you look at Cold War, for instance, and you look at MTX, all the MTX characters and stuff like that, like there was a concerted effort to make sure that we really hit a broad swath there, primarily in a character, but also diversity within levels. But just thinking about social injustice and things like that, we really tried to do that. And we also made sure like we get like different types of protagonists, either it's a female, like especially in our MTX, like like women or males. So since I'm directly involved in a lot of that, it makes it a little bit easier to help push that agenda. And we have a lot of people that, like our writer, Dan Lawfer, and our like one of our creative directors, like Miles Leslie, and all them, and Dan Bondrak, like they really focus on, and our character artists, this guy named Sonny, they understand the importance of like really pushing for diversity. But we also have groups that focus on diversity and like checks us. Like for instance, like there'd be scenarios where you might make something really benign, and we have a group that will look over some of our content and give us a report back of like, hey, the way this character is talking, or the way this character look might not, it's too stereotypical of what transgender would look like. No, these are some modifications, and we can make those adjustments. So yeah, we do have that as well to help us. But not to be long-winded, but I am actually a little disappointed globally with our industry. Like if you do a search right now,
yeah,
and you look across like all the upcoming games, like, and I'm not trying to be like bashing males or bashing whatever, but if you look across the games and you're like, hey, all these protagonists are just this like, just your typical kind of like Caucasian male.
Yeah.
It's like, but why? Mm-hmm. Like, why is that the case? Like, what is that character? What is this ethnicity adding value to your story? And I think that's the thing that I'm disappointed, because I don't feel like we're being challenged enough to understand, like, we're just default. So it's not like a slight on any particular game, but I do wish we had a more honest look of what our society looks like across the board.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, look at I remember, sorry, I'm going on a tangent.
No, please.
I remember going to go see the Spider-Man, what is it, in the multiverse?
Are you talking about the Spider-Verse one? The Miles Morales
Spider-Verse, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm watching that with my nephew, and I'm a grown man, so I don't necessarily think about things a certain way anymore. Mm-hmm. But he was like, "Hey, Spider-Man looks like me," and it was like a profound moment in his life, and I just was like, "Oh, yeah," and I think I know that's kind of shameful to be like, "Oh yeah, I had that same epiphany," but there's something to be said about having representation, and I feel like our culture is just our society is just made of just so many different types of people that it can just add value to your game, and it won't take away.
Yeah.
So I am disappointed.
Yeah, no, I totally, I don't totally understand where you're coming from, but I understand I get it in the sense of like what you're feeling, because I can never, feel what you're feeling, right? But I can get it, and like that's one reason like I seek out a lot of for films. Like I like to watch a lot of Korean films, Mexican films, African American films, just because like I kind of get tired of the same old stories that a lot of like that we've seen for so long. That's popular in culture, because I'm like I need to get different perspectives, different voice. And you're right, like I can't really think. Like when you were talking, I was like, I'm trying to think of just games where it's like not just another white male protagonist sort of thing. And like one of the ones that really jumped out to me was like Last of Us 2. You're playing as two women, one which is a lesbian in LA, which was really cool. And then it's like it's so weird to me also just like the how vitriolic people can be when it's like something that they're not used to. Mm-hmm. And it's just really odd to me. Like I just want to see a good story, and my thing is like there are good you can create good stories with every single kind of person in the world, and we should see more of that. That's all I really care about.
And I think that's, and I 1000% agree with you. It's like you're not trying to be tokenizing of like adding like, oh, let's just throw a girl in here because, we want to. It's like
we're checking off a box kind of thing.
Yeah, but what is it? What is it adding value? Like it might make sense that it might have to be, this white male. It might make sense.
Sure,
but I'm pretty sure if you add depth to your game, you might realize like, oh, this person experienced like what? Like let's just say, for instance, right? Like. Elle, right? In Last of Us, right? She was a tough girl.
Yeah.
And in her experiences made her that way. Not because she's a lesbian, but her experiences made her that way.
Exactly.
And she so happened to be lesbian, but which I think had an added bonus of like, oh yeah, like it just added depth to it. But it's like, if you'd have made, bro, if they had just made it like some just random like, just some random kid or something like that, I'd been like, I'm sure it would not have had as much of a salient, memory in people's mind.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was the thing. Like I, appreciate about what they did with that is like. It's not like shoving anything down your throat. It's just that's who she is.
Yeah,
and they established
that. She is.
Yeah, they established that with the first game and the DLC, whereas like you get to meet her first crush, and it's just totally natural and organic. You're not even thinking about, oh my god, it's a lesbian in a game. It's like no, it's like yes, but it's also this is a person and this is who she is, and that's great.
Dude, when I saw like that. The kiss of on I think it was Last of Us 2 it was in a trailer. A part of me was just like, yeah, that makes sense. Like they're obviously in love with one another. It's just, you know what I mean? It was it wasn't the because you can. I mean, I live in California. You can go in like Hollywood or something like that. You can go anywhere here, and it's just going to happen. So it's just normal. Yeah.
Shaun, this was a lot of fun. I could keep talking to you all day, but I know you got to run. I got to run too soon, so I think we'll wrap up here. I guess last thing I'll ask real quick is we were trying to get folks to give more advice to people who want to break into the industry, maybe break into the field you're in. Would you have like any one specific kernel of wisdom for someone out there who maybe wants to get into 3D art or become an art director?
Yeah. Well, to break into the industry, I think it's I kind of live by a couple of like really simple truths. Is like really staying humble, trying to stay strive for excellence, and just keep learning. I think are like the tent poles of who I am. But I think, and why saying that is, for people that are really trying to break into the industry, there's a part of needing to be specialized. So you think you really need to work on your craft and what you want to do and get hone your viewpoint, and not so much of this is what everyone else is doing, so therefore I'm going to do it. Really trying to hone your viewpoint, because I think a lot of people look for that authenticity in that artist, but then also reaching out to your network, really getting into connect, like reach out to people on LinkedIn. I've talked to a bunch of people on LinkedIn, like, hey, and staying humble is like, hey, I'm new to the industry, I want some advice. I know your time is busy. I know you're busy. Can you take like literally like 10 minutes, just look at my stuff? If it's worthwhile, please give me, let's talk. Let's set up some time. And when you set up time, people might want to set up time for hours or an hour. If someone's at a higher level, like, I only need 10 minutes of your time. I need 15 minutes of your time. And that makes it more appealing. And then from there, once you kind of build up that rapport and you feel like you have it, or at least for me, I will take their stuff and I'll pass it along to our recruiter. So I think it's, working on your craft, reaching out to your, extending beyond your comfort zone, reaching out to those the people within your network or just beyond your network. And then being consistent, following up, taking their feedback and turning it around. I think those are keys just to break in. And then once you're in the industry, my suggestion is cast away all of your assumptions. And what I mean by that is there's a bit of, I hear it all the time. Well, I thought an art director was supposed to do this, or I thought I was supposed to do this, or I thought, you know what I'm saying? You're coming with so many assumptions of like, or expectations. It's like, if you're newer to the industry, bro, you just need to like come in and be a sponge.
Yeah.
Ask as many questions. Everyone knows you're new. Ask so many questions so that you ultimately are informed and you know what you need to get done. So what happens is once you're informed, then people start relying on you because you're getting stuff done, and there's no second guessing. You know what I mean? So I know that was like a maze of different things, but
no, that's all good stuff.
Yeah,
I think particularly with asking questions and being active once you're in, because it doesn't stop just because you got in. You gotta, and you also gotta let people know that you exist.
Yeah, and it's like you're at the end of the day. If you think of yourself as a brand, you just want to make sure that your brand is servicing your community well. And what I mean by that is making sure that you're getting all the data that you need, all the analytics by asking questions, getting all of that squared away. So therefore, your brand is someone that that people can look at. It's like, oh man, this person they're striving for excellence. They're getting stuff done. So that's kind of how I look at it. And I love working with people that are hungry in that way, and I don't have to second guess them.
Well said. Well, Shaun, I think that wraps us up, man. Really good stuff. Great talking to you.
I hopefully in that word soup of stuff, there was some gems there.
So many gems.
Yeah. So thank you, Graham, for taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, that's going to wrap up our interview with Shaun. We want to thank him again for being our guest. To find out more about Mudstack, head over to mudstack.com, where you can follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and join our community on Discord. And of course, we want to thank you for listening. We'll see you next time on Clear as Mud.